Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
I've had this channel on YouTube now for a little over 10 years. And I remember years ago doing this story about the first crime in space. Well, it turns out it wasn't really a crime. But a crime was committed just by somebody who was down here on planet Earth. Sean, thanks for sending this. From CNBC, Dan Mangan wrote it. Woman pleads guilty to lying about astronaut wife accessing bank account from the space station. Now, there are a lot of things going on in that sentence. Not the least of which is her astronaut wife, she accused of committing a crime while in space. And a lot of people are saying, well, gee, how do you prosecute somebody for committing a crime in space? What jurisdiction are they under? But a former Air Force intelligence officer has pleaded guilty to lying to a federal agent by falsely claiming that her estranged astronaut wife illegally accessed her bank account while aboard the International Space Station for 6 months. That's prosecutors in Houston, Texas, saying. The guilty plea by the woman on Thursday comes more than 5 years after she was indicted in the space case for lying about actions by her wife, who is a U.S. Army colonel, West Point graduate, and combat veteran. And they were in the midst of what was apparently an unpretty divorce. The claim came at a time when one of them said that the couple was engaged in a custody battle over a 6-year-old son who had been conceived through in vitro fertilization and carried by a surrogate. This story involves so many modern twists and turns, but it boils down to really one simple thing. Somebody made a false statement to a federal agent. So the case was scheduled to go to trial next week in Houston federal court. And the defendant was a Kansas resident accused of making false statements to the Office of the Inspector General of NASA and the Federal Trade Commission, alleging that the astronaut had committed identity theft. So she alleged that her estranged spouse had guessed the password and illegally accessed her bank account while deployed to the International Space Station. So apparently they've got internet access up there. Who'd imagine that? And so this is according to the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of Texas in a statement headlined, "Far Out," on Friday. Hey, see, the government can be hip. They're using those hip phrases that all the kids are using these days. Like, hey, that's really far out, man. Now, it turns out that the account had actually been opened in April of 2018, and both parties had accessed it until January 2019, when one of them changed the credentials. The investigation revealed that the one who changed the credentials had granted her spouse access to the bank records from at least 2015, including her login credentials. At the time of the illegal access that was alleged, the one was preparing for what NASA billed as the first all-female spacewalk, which was later scrapped because the agency did not have enough spacesuits to fit the astronauts. And I'm not sure what goes into creating spacesuits or fitting them or anything of that nature, but apparently they had to scrap the whole concept. So the attorney for the woman who was accused and has now been, in essence, exonerated, her attorney told the New York Times several years ago that she had checked the account to monitor the family's finances and that she had never been told by the defendant now that she could not have access to the account. So the space woman was aboard the space station from December 2018 through June of 2019. She recently commanded the SpaceX Crew 10 crew mission to the space station from March this year until August. And I read that sentence correctly. It is the SpaceX Crew 10 crew mission to the space station. So the defendant here is free on bond right now. She'll be sentenced in February. Like we said, her trial was going to go this upcoming week, but they've scrapped it. Now it's no longer necessary. She does face a maximum possible sentence of up to 5 years in prison. CNBC has requested comment from attorneys for both of them and gotten nothing back so far. And of course, stories from CNBC. And, this is one of those things, they tell you they got the right to remain silent. Some people don't have the ability to remain silent. But here, somebody went out of their way proactively to tell federal agents that they believe a crime was committed by somebody else. This other person committed a crime, and I want you to do something about it. So when you make an allegation like that against somebody, to somebody whose job it is to investigate allegations like that, it puts them in a situation where they're spending time and energy investigating something, and then when they realize later that they're running down dead ends because it was a wild goose chase, you just wasted a bunch of time and money of government officials who have better things to do, such as investigate real crimes. And so the weird part about this is, I suspect that the allegation that my ex-boyfriend, my ex-girlfriend, my ex-wife, my ex-husband, not all of those in one story, you understand, but the statement that begins with my ex, fill in the blanks, got into my bank account and either took money or was looking at it, spying on me, those kinds of allegations probably get raised every single day in America and elsewhere. And there's probably further allegations of, and the person took money out they weren't supposed to, or they did something else. Here, one of them's literally not on the planet. They're on the space station. So there's not a lot of damage they could do up there. I understand they could have transferred money out or something, but they didn't. The allegation is that she accessed the account and looked at it. I mean, that was the allegation. And now, of course, if somebody hacks into your bank account, that could be a crime. So she reports that, and after they do a full investigation, they go, wait a second. This person had access and credentials, and you gave them access to the credentials. Oh. And I don't know if some people are just sloppy in their thinking and don't think this stuff through, because eventually they're going to figure this stuff out. And I've heard so many stories where somebody makes an allegation to the police, and the police do a little bit of investigating, go, wait a second. That's not what happened here. And you know it. And there you go. So the crazy part about this one is it simply made the news because the allegation, if it bared out, we believe would have been the first crime committed in space. There may be others. It's so hard to tell. But, and so it made, I believe, international news. It was all over the news for like 3 minutes a few years ago. I remember doing videos about it. And so here we are, and it turns out that no, the crime that was committed down on Earth by somebody accusing somebody in space of a crime that apparently never happened. And so that's scary. But lying to a federal official, turns out you can get up to 5 years. Now, the interesting question I have, because I often have these thoughts occur to me, is that if you or I, or just any average person, were to go out today and make a false statement to a federal officer, federal agent, and say, here this crime was committed, I want you to investigate. And then investigate and come to the conclusion that you lied to them, or I lied to them, or whoever, somebody lied to them. And they decide to prosecute you for that. And you pled guilty like she did. The question is, they say you can get up to 5 years. And interestingly, they look at a whole bunch of factors when they determine your sentence, one of which is, do you have a record, or do you have a clean record previous to this? Are you likely to reoffend? That kind of stuff. And of course, one of the things I think they look at is, what will other people think when they see the story? Because if you or I made a false statement to a federal agent and got prosecuted, it probably wouldn't hit the news. Or if it hit the news, it'd be just a blip one day on the local news aggregator site or something. But this thing was all over the international news. And so the high-profile nature of the case might come into play in sentencing. I'm curious about this, because if it does, I understand it. You can't make false allegations, and the false allegation that was made was so publicized that you kind of need that kind of publicity at the other end to cancel it out. Because right about now, every time the astronaut tells people she was in the International Space Station, they would go, "Oh, did you work with that criminal who was hacking from up there?" I heard there was a woman hacking up there. Was that you? It was you? You're the hacker? And she's got to go, "No, it was a false allegation. The woman who made the allegation against me pled guilty to committing a federal offense." Oh, okay. So the question is, will the high-profile nature of the case play into the sentencing? I don't think that's one of the official guideline points. I don't think so. But, in the back of the mind of the judge and the prosecutor and everybody else, they're thinking this. They're going, got so much publicity at the front end, it deserves some publicity at the end. So here we go. Sean, thanks for sending that from CNBC. Dan Mangan wrote it. It's actually all over the place. In fact, Sean sent me a different version of it, but I read several and I decided to go with this one. Woman pleads guilty to lying about astronaut wife accessing bank account from a space station. Yeah, a lot going on there. I understand. Questions or comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. You don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great.